There's a lot of ways to use a first-round pick, and the Chiefs have done pretty much everything with their last few. What comes down on Throwback Thursday that give us a hint about the upcoming draft today on Locked On Chiefs?
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back in, Chiefs Kingdom. We're brought to you today by FanDuel. Make every single moment more. Right now, new customers are getting $150 in bonus bets back, guaranteed. That's $150. All you got to do is play a game, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get started. We have a lot for you. What could come of the Chiefs' first-round pick? You could trade back. You could trade up. You could stay put. These are all the scenarios today on Throwback Thursday that we're going to review and take a look at what scenarios could be like today with Chris Clark here from Chiefs Corner. You can find him over there where you're going to get everything cap-wise, business-wise, quarterback-wise. A lot going on there. And I am over at Rogue Analytics, rogueapc.com. The draft guide is out, and you can get a discount on it by using the code LOC at the website. It'll be in the notes as well. You can find me at RGR Football and NFL33.com. The draft guide is huge. So is the Matrix, and it's all going to come down to what the Chiefs do with their first pick here on the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every single day. Make sure that you get liked and subbed and hit the bell here on YouTube and get over to Spotify and Apple and any audio platform because we're free 5 days a week.
Isn't it crazy how, we talked before the show going back 3 years. But if you think back about it, go back 10 years, almost 11. I guess it'd probably be 11 years now because the 2013 draft, they had the number one pick. Mm-hmm. Now they're picking 32. Obviously, a lot has changed since then. But you still look at things similarly in the mirror a little bit to an extent, and you look back at what happened in the 2017 draft. They're picking at 27. They trade up to 10. They trade away their 2018 first-round pick. And then they win the Super Bowl 2 years later in 2020, and they come back and they draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 32. They stayed at 32. That was a weird draft because that was the COVID draft. That was the draft where Roger Goodell was in his wherever he was. I think it was in his basement. Yeah, that's what I thought. And he was, running the draft from his basement. We heard reports afterwards that, Patrick Mahomes really wanted Clyde Edwards-Helaire. There's lots of different things to talk about, but it's just interesting when you start thinking back to previous drafts, how this roster, how this team has changed over the last 11 years that Andy Reid's been here. And they've really gone through the gamut of having all these different draft picks in the first round and done a lot of different things with them.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about other scenarios, but staying right where you are, that draft with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, that also contained Willie Gay, who just departed. Lucas Niang is still on the roster, same draft. L'Jarius Sneed just departed. Mike Dana, still on the roster. So you've gone through.
First guy that they've drafted recently that they've signed a multi-year deal to, Mike Dana.
Fair point. So Clyde comes back home now on his second contract with the Chiefs, but that was the last time where they got in a position and they had something they wanted to do. I think going back and looking at it, you realize first-round running backs, especially at 32, are not exactly the best investment. I think Clyde's first tenure here in Kansas City would have been a lot different if he had been selected in the mid-50s where he should have been.
Yeah, and it's also different because then you also think not only just 2020 or 2021 when they drafted Clyde, but also last year they drafted FAU and they stayed where they were. They drafted a guy and but the big thing that they did that they changed is they drafted a premium position guy.
And I think that's really the key. And that's the lesson that from staying put that I think we need to remind ourselves of most this year is that if you're going to stay there, if you either choose not to, or in more likely scenario for the Chiefs is that they can't find a trade partner, especially to move up. I do believe there will be opportunities to move back in this particular draft. We can discuss that at another time, maybe on Freaky Friday, maybe next week. But I think the lesson has to be.
Show.
I agree. I think the lesson to be learned there is if you have to stick, if you have no trade partners and you cannot move out, you have to stay with the premium positions to give yourself the best bet of landing someone who eventually is going to play snaps for you. Felix didn't play a lot last year. We knew, if you looked at my draft board, you knew he was not a first-round selection. He was not graded that way. He needed time to develop. He's gotten that. I thought you saw a little flash from him at the end of the season.
Yep.
I think you can expect to see more, and I think that's part of it. That's okay. If you have to have a redshirt year at pick 32, I think you can live with that. But you got to have it at a premium position that will eventually pay off that much more.
Well, yeah, and the reason it pays off that much more is because you have a cheap fifth-year option. So it makes it even more advantageous to take a guy at a premium position. Even if he doesn't play the first year, you've still possibly got 4 good years of him that you can get at a cheap rate compared to a contract at that position. So I do think that that's a great decision by the Chiefs to stay focused on that. And I hope they continue to go to premium positions with the 32nd pick if that's where they stay this year. I mean, that's the big question. Is that what they're going to do? I mean, there's lots of different ways you can go in the draft. We've talked about all of them ad nauseum, but the reality is that you have 3 choices. You either stay where you are, you trade up, or you trade back. And I guess there's technically a fourth option, which we're going to talk about here in a moment, with trading away your pick altogether for a player. Don't see that happening in Kansas City right now.
No, I can't.
Don't think that's an option this year.
No, I don't. But it certainly is a possibility. In general, we're going to get to that coming up next on Locked On Podcast Network. It's playoff time in the NBA, the NHL, and baseball is just getting into its full swing. FanDuel is the place to bet on every single game that you're interested in. Right now, new customers are getting $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 back on your account, win or lose. Everything happens from slap shots to home runs to dunks. Everything in the app that is safe, easy to use, and very, very straightforward. What are you waiting for? FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's where you go. Make your first bet an automatic win at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And make sure that you hit a home run by going to Locked On Sports Today feed. It's 24/7. Whenever you want sports, you can get it right here on the YouTube platform or on Amazon Fire. Check that out. We have another scenario, trading away your pick. I want to know exactly what you mean by this one.
So if you look back, the year after Clyde, they traded away their first-round pick for Orlando Brown.
Mm-hmm.
As of right now, I don't really see this scenario being something that they could do this year, but we are talking about what they've done in the past. And to me, that's really what you look at. I mean, you look at, I guess you could look at it as another scenario. Look at what they did for Patrick Mahomes. In 2018, they didn't have a first-round pick because they traded it away for Patrick Mahomes. Not saying it wasn't worth it. Obviously, it has been. But, that's a scenario. I don't think that that's going to be happening this season. I don't see that there's a player out there that we know of that's available that, somebody would want to trade away and maybe get a first-round pick. Maybe that's something that's going to come out on draft day. That's definitely possible. This draft is different than most in the fact that it is so deep. People are wanting to get into this draft. They're wanting to have draft picks in this draft. I think that's part of the reason the Chiefs had a hard time getting a 2024 draft pick for L'Jarius Sneed. It's because teams wanted to be in this draft.
Agreed. I cannot think of a lot of players right now that I would trade the 32nd pick away for. One comes to mind for me. Do any come to mind for you?
We talked about it on a Freaky Friday. I mean, if you were really wanting to go all out, Justin Jefferson is the one player I think I would throw out there and say, I give up the 32nd pick and a pick in a first round next year and consider doing even more than that.
I can see that. I mean, that is definitely an all-in scenario. I'm thinking a little less lucrative, but I am thinking there's rumors out there that Brandon Ayuk might not be long for San Francisco any longer. Would you give up 32 for him? You'd probably have to give up more, maybe something next season as well.
In a heartbeat.
I feel like given this, that's the way that you could get that done.
Yeah, in a heartbeat, I give up 32 for Brandon Ayuk. I do think that he is that type of wide receiver. I think he is a guy that they're not going to be able to get that type of talent at 32. The only problem, the biggest problem with doing that for Ayuk is you're going to have to pay him, and you're going to have to pay him, I don't know, close to $30 million a year. I don't know that it's going to be 30, but he's definitely a top 10 wide receiver, I think, or easily top 15. I think there's a case to be made at top 10 in the NFL. So you're going to have to pay him handsomely. So, I mean, that's going to cause a little bit of an issue with it. But that also probably means that they're not going to have to pay as much. He is a fantastic player, but he's not the premium talent that a guy like Justin Jefferson would be.
True. It's definitely a tier down. Now, on the field, I love the fit, and I think that would be a viable trade scenario. You mentioned the most important part of it. They put themselves right back into the scenario that they were this year with L'Jarius Sneed, where you're ending a contract and you have to fork over huge money. Will it be 30 a year? No. But it'll still be very, very significant, at least as much as L'Jarius would have been. And yes, you're going to get a little bit of cap relief, but it's not going to be enough, in my opinion. So the prohibitive part about trading away 32 for a player is the contract that's going to come with it, either this year when they're trying to three-peat or next year when they're trying to quad-peat.
Yeah.
See what I did there?
Quad-peat. Yeah, I did see what you did there. I caught it right before you pointed it out. I do think it's interesting to think about what could they trade away this year. But the other kind of alternative in my mind in this is, and maybe this is really what we should be talking about in this sense, because I think it's more likely than maybe trading away for a player right now. Maybe this is another scenario where they're doing something like a Patrick Mahomes type deal and using their first next year and not having a first in 2025 to go get a player that they really want, trading up high enough to go get a player that they really, really want.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that in depth coming up in the next segment. Trading the pick away completely, as we're talking about here, just has to be such a unique scenario that you can get not just value for this pick, but if you have to throw in more. Coming back to our previous conversation in the last segment, it's also got to be, if not a premier position, one that certainly is a deficit on your current roster. And so that comes down to either two things, tackles or wide receivers, right? It's the only way you're trading this pick away pre-draft.
I would do it for a DT.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that they have the defensive line that they had last year, and I think that could be a good defensive line, but it's not great. And if you really want the most out of Chris Jones, you need to give him somebody that can be Chris Jones light or somewhere close to Chris Jones light. I mean, you have to give him somebody next to him that's going to also force them at times to double team him when Chris Jones decides to go outside. And then you have a scenario where maybe you have, four guys going against, 5 or 6, but you have 2 or 3 guys, going one way and 2 or 3 guys going the other, and you're going to have somebody going up the middle, probably free. I mean, that's the reality, is you have to get guys that can cause teams to have to double them at times.
Yeah, there's no other way around it. The question is, can you get value that way? And right now, I don't know that anybody's parting with a D tackle that fits that description.
No, I agree. That I just said it because that's the only other position I would really think about. I think that you have enough depth at defensive end that I don't think you want to do that, because you want to have, you're going to want FAU to play. So you're going to want to have that type of scenario. And there's some other guys on your roster. I don't expect maybe that BJ Thompson's going to be in a huge role this year, but maybe he's got somebody that can come in as a situational rusher this year. Lots of different ways. So I don't see them doing that for a D end. I could see them doing it for, like you said, wide receiver, offensive tackle, and potentially defensive tackle for me.
Well, I think that's probably the longer of the shots, but what isn't is exactly what you mentioned. Trading up to get a specific player, having to give up the capital. What would that look like this year? Coming up next on the Locked On Podcast Network.
Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and much, much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
Locked On Sports Today feed is 24/7, and it's just for you. It's all the major sports that you need this time of year when we're patiently waiting for the draft, or in my case, impatiently waiting for the draft. We're still going to get there. This is the scenario. This is the scenario that everybody wants to talk about right now, and it's the trade up in this draft using 32 plus.
Yeah, and I guess I see this a little bit different. And that's why I mentioned it the last segment, is because to me, this is trading up like a second, third, or fourth round pick to go up and get your guy in the first round. What I was looking at in the last one was trading up a first round pick plus another first round pick. Because to me, when you went and did the Mahomes deal, that's what you were doing. You were making a huge move. In this scenario, the best scenario we can talk about when it comes to trading up is going and getting Trent McDuffy. It didn't cost them. It cost them, what, a third round pick, maybe fourth round pick to go up and get Trent McDuffy. I mean, that to me is huge value. And that's kind of where I'm looking at in this scenario is doing something like that. I'm not going to be shocked if they send their first rounder to somebody else, because I do think that three-peat is kind of important to this team. And it's something that the other part of it, and I guess we kind of talked about this already, is the 2025 draft is not going to be near as deep as the 2024 draft. Using that extra first round pick to get the elite talent may be worth it from that regard. It
may absolutely be. And it was a third round pick. It was number 94.
Okay.
And I believe
it sounds very familiar. Now I think about it.
Yeah.
Drafted 95 this year.
Amazing when you're drafting in the same spot after a couple of seasons, right? And I do believe it was a fourth as well. So there were two picks there. 29, okay. 94, and 121. Very, very similar numbers where the Chiefs are now. Again, that was, I think we're at 131 actually.
Oh, is it 131? Okay. Wow.
Yeah, close enough though. But that comes part and parcel with a different scenario as well. Trent McDuffy was there to be traded for because he fell. Because the expectation was that he would be gone by 15, and the Chiefs were happily surprised that he was not. And that's what they were able to engineer.
And who they jumped a deal to get that done.
Everyone.
Yeah, but who else did they jump that was more particularly fun?
That poor team that's tearing themselves down to the girders right now, the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah. Which is fun because Kansas City could do something similar this year and trade up ahead of the Buffalo Bills to take a wide receiver that maybe the Buffalo Bills would love.
I mean, there's always that possibility, right?
And Chiefs fans would rejoice.
And kudos to Brandon Beane. He does a heck of a job. But if he's got a nemesis, it's Brett Vach. I mean, let's be real.
Yep.
I love to see that continue, and I do think there will be a bit of jockeying for the wide receiver talent here, because they're both, as playoff teams, in a position where they can't get the cream of the crop at their selection at the wide receiver position. So they both need to go up if that's what they're trying to do.
The bigger problem for Buffalo, though, is that they just don't have the talent. Like, I would feel better about the Kansas City Chiefs wide receiving core than I do about the Bills right now.
I like Khalil Shakir. He's not an anchor. He's not a one.
I do like him, but who do they have? Like, Khalil, obviously Rice is better than Shakir. So Marquise Brown versus who on the Bills? That's my point.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce is still technically the number one. Well, no, yeah. I mean, Travis Kelce is still the number one guy, and say what you want about Dawson Knox and their other ends. I can't think of their other tight end right now.
Curtis Samuel's in the slot. Justin Shorter's out wide right now.
Curtis Samuel,
Matt
I guess.
Holland's backing him up.
Yeah, I guess Curtis Samuel is about maybe on par with Marquise Brown to an extent. I still think that you still have the better wide receiver. Huh?
I wouldn't say that.
Well, it's closer than I would have thought. I forgot about Samuel. But my point is I'd still take the Chiefs wide receivers over what the Bills have right now.
Yeah, they definitely need to correct that. And so that's probably the move to watch. And the Chiefs are going to have to move around in order to avoid. So obviously, we talk grades constantly. Every mock draft that we do on Mondays, folks, we throw as many scenarios at you as we can. We're going to continue that. The freaky stuff, the fun stuff we do on Fridays, you'll see that tomorrow.
Trading back. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, it's the compression syndrome. You guys know how I work on that. There's plenty there. If you haven't seen one of those shows before, make sure you're here for Freaky Friday, because we're going to go through some interesting scenarios about how we would move around if we were in charge. I mean, if Brett has to take a vacation, I'm more than happy to step in. We'll see what happens. There will be a damn fullback, though. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, but at least one. Ryan would probably draft 2, and he would probably make a KU player in there somewhere. But the reality is, you start talking about trading back. This is also the draft to possibly consider that, because you're also looking at what a top 100 pick being more valuable than probably the last 2 or 3 drafts.
And here's how you put them together.
This roster.
Try to trade up, push the price of trading up through the roof, let the Bills go spend that, and then trade back and reap the benefits.
Yep. So, lots to talk about. We're going to have fun on tomorrow's show with the Freaky Friday trade back. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Let us know what you would like to see us do. Leave your comments here on YouTube. Like, sub, and hit the bell on YouTube as well. You can hit us in the Spotify reviews or in the Apple podcast reviews, whatever you want. Well, we'll see those as well. But make sure you get on the audio platforms, because we're free for you every single day, plus then some. And you've everydayers, we appreciate you. And we run on your juice, and we appreciate it. Thank you for being here today. Freaky Friday tomorrow, Mock Draft Monday, another scenario for you when we get a little bit more down to what is this draft really going to look like coming up then. But until then, check out the rest of the Locked On Podcast Network, Locked On Sports Today. We thank you for being here with us. We will talk to you tomorrow.